I got a fan clutch issue. When I put air to the fan clutch, it's supposed to release it, make it freewheel, and it's not working. And I made a mistake and bought a fan clutch solenoid, which is right up here on top. That's the new one right there, the gold piece with that green hose coming out of it. I was on YouTube and found some videos about rebuilding these fan clutches. Freightliner says this clutch, if they could find it, would be $2,500. They can't find it. Of course, that's not an option. I wouldn't pay that. But I found some videos about rebuilding them. I found a website about buying parts to rebuild it. I don't think I need to rebuild it. I think all I need to do is clean the seal kit and put it back together, and that's what I'm going to try to do today. I already started. I slipped a piece of cardboard between the fan and the radiator. I was able to slip it in from underneath the shroud there, and it slid on up, and I got it in there so I don't scratch up my knuckles on the radiator. And I'm getting these bolts out. They're small ones like this, and these two bigger wrenches are to get the fan clutch off the block. But I got two of these out. There's I think about 6 of them in there. I'm using this extendable 3/8 drive ratchet with a 14mm socket in my case. Of course, these slide bolts here, you gotta loosen those up, take the hose off up here, and then loosen up this adjustable fan tightener to get the belts off. I'm leaving the belts tight right now so I can get the fan bolts off. Since it's an awkward position and very limited room in front of that fan to get in there, I decided to, right here on the very top, in between those two things right there, that little channel, that's where the bolts go through, is those channels. Well, I got one right on top in the center, and I already had that bolt out, but I screwed it back in a couple threads just for the fan to hang on while I get the rest of them off, so it's hanging centered, and hopefully that'll make it a little easier to control when I get down to the last bolt. Got the fan loose, but it doesn't want to come out. I'm hoping I can get enough room to get that clutch out of there. Got the little hose fitting off right here. These are the bolts I'm going to loosen up. I got double wrench on here, 18mm on the bottom one, and it's going to be a 19 up here on the top one. That's right in here. That's going to be an open end. Can't get a boxed end in there behind that pulley. And we got the same thing on the other side. These are the slide brackets that allow you to adjust the belts. I'm going to have a problem getting space here without moving the radiator forward, which is going to be a major job. So I took a Sharpie and I marked these two lines on here. If you're looking down closer from in line with this part with this one, straight in there, it's that's so that I can find the bolt holes. And I did the same thing on the other side. What I'm going to try to do is this aluminum spacer right here. So I'm hoping I can just knock this piece off with a block of wood and a hammer. And if I get this out of there, then I got plenty of room to work. I am having trouble getting it off, and I looked at the video again, and yes, that piece does come off because the place I actually got to get to clean the seals is inside of that. So that aluminum spacer comes off, the air cylinder is inside of it. There, I'm standing up on top, and so I got a pickle fork that has a flat side, a smaller pickle fork, the kind you use on tie rod ends on a car. First I pounded over here on this side, you might see some marks there, and then I brought it over here, pounded over here, and I finally got it to start going in there and wedging it out. But I'm very limited how many places I can get at it because of so many things around here. We got it off. I can get this thing out of here. It ain't in there by much. Can't do it with one hand. I need two hands. Got a couple bungee straps stretched across there to keep the fan out of the way while I get the rest of these bolts off. There's only 4 bolts as far as I know holding this thing on. I got to go up on top and loosen up the belts, get the belts off of there, and that's what this bolt that goes right down through the center up there on top. This fan belt adjusting bolt on top, it's a long one, it has to come out. Okay, got the belts off. Now I gotta loosen these bolts on both sides, one on each side. These, of course, on the bottom came right out, but these on top, we're gonna have to work them out a little at a time because we can't get them out with this pulley here. I screwed the bolts that came out. Of course, I had to get them out with a wrench when the belts were on there, but now that the belts are off, I got room. The ones on the bottom, I screwed them back in a couple threads so that this thing doesn't fall, or at least doesn't fall very far when it does come loose. Got it out. It wasn't easy, but according to that video I looked at, I've never done this before. This is the piece I got to open up and get inside and clean some seals out, because when I blow air in this, it doesn't release the clutch. Well, it does. Look at that. Well, this obviously has a crown nut on it. Things do look a little bit different than they did on the video. I'm going to take a chance, take that crown nut off, and hopefully this thing doesn't fly apart on me. I know it's spring. It's got springs in there holding the clutch together. Before I go through all this, I just tried it. I'm going to do it on the camera. Is blow air in this air line, trying to free this clutch up again, because I poured WD-40 in this line when it was first froze up. And I'm not getting the clutch to move. Well, the springs are pushing it out, so I'm not going to take that off all the way without first clamping this with some C-clamps before I take that off the rest of the way, or else this is going to fly apart on me. Okay, I got the C-clamps on there, and I just broke this nut loose, and I'm going to loosen this up a little at a time with the C-clamps and see how far out this thing goes. Because maybe it would have been okay to take it off without the C-clamps. Maybe it won't come out that far. This is different than what they had on the video. Looks like this one didn't really need C-clamps. We can go on ahead and take this off, I think. So this is just the bearing and the hub. And for those who don't know, this video is separate from a series I just did rebuilding the engine, and I don't have the money to rebuild this thing properly. I see two different sizes of little places here to mount these springs. The ones with the little plastic bushing go on the one with the smaller stem. Well, I'm learning something here. I took the air hose off, and after getting this hub off over here, and I blow the air through this thing here, the air blows out of a hole right in here, and it blows out good. So my problem is not back here, but it's going to be up here someplace. And I did find a broken O-ring, but I didn't hear any air leaking anywhere. It's coming out of a hole right here. Blowing on my thumb right now. I had to knock this off of there. I didn't know it. This was in there like that, and it was stuck. I was trying to figure out, well, these springs push this clutch into this hub. This hub is held stationary by the center bolt. So I thought, there's no springs pushing against me. Why isn't it coming out? The springs are out. So I smacked this outer hub with this clutch with a hammer, and it popped off of there. So this is how it comes apart. This is the actual material or lining that goes against this. I can clean all this up and put it back together, but I don't have the rebuild kit, and it's just not an option financially. We're still in January and I'm coming out of an engine rebuild. I got a broken O-ring. I've got O-rings around here. I'll find one to replace it with. We'll clean up these parts, put it back together, and then bench test it. I'm finding rust and scale around this bore right here, or around this machined area here, that the clutch release cylinder that rides on top of this, I believe that's what it was stuck on, and so I'm cleaning this off with a Scotch-Brite pad and some diesel, and I'm going to do the same thing on that bore, which is right here in this piece here. I'm going to clean that out real good too, because I think that's what my problem was, that it was rusted together and stuck, and that's why the air couldn't push it off. This little hub here is the piston that moves. The air goes in here and comes in behind it and pushes this in and out. I had trouble getting this opened up, but at least it wasn't rusted shut. It was just kind of gunked up shut. We're just finding enough small issues on this to explain why the thing was stuck. I'm going to clean this up and clean up that O-ring. Wish I could afford to buy the rebuild kit. Alright, I got off the phone with the people that make the rebuild kits, and they said just use any light bearing grease that I got in the shop, and so that's what I'm going to do. And since this O-ring is 20 years old, I didn't take it out. I was scared it would break. I just cleaned it up with it in there, and it's clean, and the ring slides around on there. We'll just go ahead and put this back together, and okay, that's in there. Grease inside here too. Put this O-ring on here. Put a different O-ring on because the one that was in there was broke. Okay, I got that O-ring in there. Now this should go in there good now. This doesn't belong there, it belongs in the clutch first. Looks to me like I got some shiny gouge marks all the way around, and they are in exactly the same pattern that these bolt holes are in. And so it looks like the bolt holes or bolts are coming through the hub and touching this. Well, I'm going to put some washers on those bolts and space them out a little bit, because the hub is not bottoming out in the drum with the friction material. That's not bottoming out in the drum, it's hitting bolts. So we'll just put some washers on those bolts and space them out. I'd like to be able to change all these bearings, but well, now it's time to put these springs back on. Before I torque that down, I'm going to go ahead and put shop air to it and see if it releases like it should. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. See that? That's what we need. Got her dead. Put my air hose back on it. Go out and install it. Of course, installation to be just the exact reverse of taking it off. Got to clean up these burrs I left on here when I had to wedge this thing off of there with a pickle fork. Just common sense on that. I just had a bear of a time getting these bolts started. I got the two bottom ones in. First, I made a choker out of one of the fan belts and tied it on around the fan belt pulleys and used that for a handle. While I got a couple of threads started with one of these bolts on one side on the bottom, and then did the same thing on the other side. And then getting the top ones in. Look where they are. That's terrible. But that's all the room I got, and so what I did was on that choker, I got a pipe in there and I got it up on top across a couple of things, and if that wasn't high enough where it is, I'd just have to shim it up, shoving some little slices of wood or something underneath the end of the pipe. But that's what I did to get it started. Now that I got one of these bolts in on the top, I got to do the other side. I got 3 started now, so the 4th one's going to be hard to get to, but I think we can do it now.